All right, everybody, welcome into the Alley Oop. I'm your host, Ryan Blackburn. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Really appreciate all the love and support on the podcast as always. Today is what I would consider a normal Tuesday episode because it's not going to be the standard divisional check-in. Those are going to start next week on November 3rd. But I have a special one for you today. Got CJ Holmes to come on and talk about the Golden State Warriors, talk about their debut, talk about Chris Paul's debut. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I think that conversation is pretty valuable, even if the Warriors lost, because they are such an important fabric of the NBA today, and Chris Paul is such an important player of the NBA's fabric. So should be interesting to see how those two things mesh together. We talked about them. We talked about a variety of other topics, including Nuggets-Lakers, Victor Wembanyama, Celtics-Knicks, things like that. So really good conversation there. That's the second part of the episode. Runs about 32 minutes. Starting off, though, wanted to talk about Milwaukee, Philly tonight. Talk about the Dame Giannis duo and things that I think we can take away from that. That runs for about 15 minutes or so, and then we will get into that conversation with CJ Holmes. So thank you so much for tuning in. But first, the alley-oop.
Giannis trailing the lob. Oh! Run, 2-on-1. Green the finish. Wow, the alley-oop. LeBron turned the corner. Inside! He made Yusuf Nurkic a screensaver. Here comes Murray. Alley-oop to Gordon. Oh, what a play.
All right, welcome into the alley-oop. This is a solo episode, kind of a monologue here at the beginning of the podcast for Friday. I'm having a conversation with CJ Holmes later if you're listening on the audio side of things. But for this video, I wanted to focus on the Bucks and the Sixers tonight. Thought this was a very intriguing game. I got to sit down and watch it. And lo and behold, the Bucks, they look really good. They look really, really good. And it's going to take a little bit. I do think that's the most important thing in situations like these when you put a couple of dominant players together. You got to have patience. They are going to try to figure each other out. And the rest of the bench, basically, for the Bucks, it's still trying to figure itself out too. So have to give them the benefit of the doubt. But the Bucks win 118-117 against the Philadelphia 76ers. And Damian Lillard, in his debut, rocked it. Just absolutely rocked it. 39 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, 0 turnovers. 9 of 20 from the field, 4 of 12 from 3, 17 of 17 from the line. He was a plus 12 in this game. And to me, this is one of those things where you see the immediate difference between Damian Lillard and Jrue Holiday. It's a trade-off, right? And it may have resulted in the same kind of result that would have happened in a game like this between these two teams where, yeah, Tyrese Maxey goes off a little bit and the Sixers find a little bit of room on their end. But the Bucks ultimately have the guy. Dame makes the game-winning shot or most important game shot at the end against Kelly Oubre and splashes a 3 right in his grill after a sequence of dribble moves. And he just looks like he's never left. Like he is just the same top 10 player version of Damian Lillard. And it's early in the season. You never know how a body's going to hold up across the year. But the Bucks, they look like they can go as far as Damian Lillard can help Giannis take them because this is a dynamic duo. The pick and roll between them was good. Time will make it great. This is one of those situations, again, where you just have to be patient and they have to figure each other out. There were a lot of situations where Giannis was just kind of watching Dame ISO on the right wing or the left wing, and Giannis just camped out there. Not really helping because he's not a floor spacer or anything. So they're going to have to figure out what makes sense when Dame wants to ISO while Giannis is also on the floor. Because it might just be sending Giannis down to the rebounding position, but that doesn't really make much sense either in terms of Giannis' skill set. So I'm curious to see how they figure that out. But Giannis goes for 23 points, 13 rebounds, 3 assists, and 4 stocks. Did have 7 turnovers, and he was a minus 13. So it's important to point that out, that the Sixers, they actually did a great job against Giannis. And that was, if that was the game plan, to take away the second best player in the world, whatever you want to call him. I mean, they did a good job. 23 points for a guy like that when he's taking 22 shots. Got to the free throw line a few times, but missed his opportunities there. It was as good of a job by the Sixers as you could really expect. Joel Embiid, PJ Tucker, they deserve a lot of credit. Only 16 minutes for Chris Middleton. I thought that he looked good during his time, though, and I assume as he continues to work his way back from the injury that he suffered last year, that number will go up and up. He had a double-digit positive in the plus-minus himself, so this Bucks team, they need that spacing. They need somebody that they can rely upon. They need somebody who they can have run secondary ball handling pick and rolls with, and Middleton feels like a great option there as a 6'8" versatile wing. So if he can stay on the floor and assist this Dame Giannis duo, then it's a fantastic trio, at least in theory. So gonna have to wait and see across the entire season, because like I said, for Dame, season is long and things happen, and this will definitely not be there will be downs, there will be ups, there will be plenty of opportunities for more reaction. This was more or less what I expected from this trio so far. Malik Beasley got the start next to them instead of Pat Connaughton. Thought that was interesting, but he was fine, nothing special. Guarded Tyrese Maxey for much of the time, and he was okay. The trio of Beauchamp, Jay Crowder, and Bobby Portis off the bench, though, that was pretty interesting. I thought that was an interesting dynamic trio, at least in some respects. The thing that you really notice with that group is that the size is really good on the perimeter and on the interior. Now, not when you're going against Joel Embiid, but against everybody else, including Paul Reed, PJ Tucker, Tobias Harris. I thought that group stood up pretty well, and Marjon Beauchamp is somebody that the Bucks, they really have a lot of value in. They want him to step up and take a larger role because in theory, he makes sense as that kind of fifth starter that the Bucks are looking for, where you're the versatile kind of do-it-all defensive player who's a big enough and athletic enough cutter and spacer that the Bucks can trust, but he's only in his second season. It's going to take some time. But Jay Crowder, after playing poorly last season, he kind of acquitted himself tonight. We'll see if that can continue. And Bobby Portis, he just makes a lot of sense as the third big for a Giannis Brook Lopez front court. So hopefully they continue to mesh there. It just would not surprise me at all if this team starts to hit their stride relatively early, because Dame staggers with the second unit a little bit, Giannis staggers with the second unit a little bit, and they just win 58 games. We'll see if they stay healthy enough for that, but it wouldn't surprise me. On the Sixers side, Embiid had good and bad moments. The good moments were mostly the defensive moments where standing up Giannis at the rim, playing a pretty good defensive position, whether he's helping out on other guys or not. But he was kind of out of rhythm on offense a little bit, and it didn't seem like he settled down that much until he actually got into that pick and pop game, that pick and roll game with Tyrese Maxey, who had himself a night. He was really, really good for the Sixers, but Embiid, it took until the fourth quarter for him to really look himself, and he looked gassed for much of this game. I wonder how much conditioning is a factor for him, and that will be a fascinating thing to watch with the Sixers not having James Harden to also kind of carry the burden. So should be fascinating to track there. But Maxey looks like a star. He just looks like that dude, and it's been very cool to see that because he's coming out of Kentucky, fourth year, got his he didn't get his contract extension, but it seems like he should, and he clearly deserves a star max, and he's going to be one of those guys that you turn around and you're looking at, oh wow, he averages 25 and 7 for the Sixers this year. And if it's up that high, then he's going to make himself a bunch of money on the next contract too, regardless of what the Sixers want to do. Somebody will pay him that, and Tyrese Maxey will earn that money. So good on him. He looks like he is improved as a passer, as a playmaker, and I thought he set up Embiid well, especially in that fourth quarter. Tobias Harris, great too, 20 points on 9 shots, and he just made everything that he shot up at the rim tonight. He was really good. Kelly Oubre, same thing. Tremendous off the bench. Somebody who they got for the veteran minimum and probably didn't expect a ton of, but he delivered 27 points on 11 shots. Like, that's a great, great margin for those three guys. And it's not a great sign, in my opinion, that the Sixers got 78 points from Maxey, Tobias Harris, and Kelly Oubre, and they still lost. They did. And look, they were down 4 right at the end, could not fully get a good shot off until D'Anthony Melton hit a buzzer beater off the glass to really cut it to 1. This game did go back and forth a little bit, and Lillard kind of iced it towards the end, and it just never really felt like the Sixers had a great feel for it, but they just shot the heck out of the ball until it kind of came around for them, and they couldn't really capitalize at the end. I thought that the Bucks, especially Dame, did a great job of taking over. That's going to be a fun thing to track. Who's closing the game for the Bucks? I think the ball's going to be in Damian Lillard's hands, just like it was in Jrue Holiday's hands for much of last season. The difference is that Jrue, more often than not, should defer to Giannis. I'm not sure that Dame should. I'm honestly not. I think that he is such a talented offensive player, probably the 3rd or 4th best offensive player in the league at this point, based off of the numbers that he puts up and the dynamic offensive talent that he has. And he is just awesome to watch. The foul baiting gets a little bit like he definitely jumps into guys a lot, tries to draw as much contact as possible, and that's going to be frustrating, especially when watching the Bucks, who are they're going to draw a lot of fouls and free throws. That's just going to be how it is. The Sixers get a lot of crap for that, and Embiid gets a lot of crap for that, and he got a little bit of that tonight. But without Harden there, the Bucks are going to be the team that draws the most free throws in the league. I feel very strongly about that. The Harden absence, we'll wrap up with this. That remains weird. The reporting around it is weird. There are different sides of this story where the Clippers are trying to tell everybody, we are not in on James Harden anymore. We are just not interested in that. That might change if the Clippers have a star go down. It just might. The Clippers are trying to distance themselves from this because Harden just doesn't look very good in all of this stuff. Like 10 days away from the team for personal reasons is the reason that they gave. He doesn't want to be there, and it's pretty clear that he doesn't want to be there, and nothing that he has said has changed that feeling. So I think that this is going to drag on for a little bit here. Obviously don't have any reporting on that, but no team is going to go out of their way right now to trade for Harden as a distressed asset. Like, you know what the price is. If you've talked to Daryl Morey at all, he's going to try to drive up the price and keep it as high as possible until he gets what he wants. And he is not going to settle for a bargain deal. The Sixers are not going to be fleeced in this. Daryl Morey has made that quite clear. And they will ride it out until at least the trade deadline. I don't think that the Sixers will survive past a couple months doing that. I think that Embiid will play himself into better shape. He will be very good. He's extremely talented already. It's pretty clear. And Maxey, if he can develop into that all-star caliber guy, it papers over a lot of the weaknesses. But the fact is that when you have a star caliber player that just sits out and isn't there, it is going to make the pressure really high on Tobias Harris and Kelly Oubre and D'Anthony Melton and guys like that, who probably shouldn't have that much pressure on them at this stage in their careers. Kelly Oubre was definitely not brought in to score 27 points a game. He was brought in to see what he could give. Nothing too crazy. He is a talented enough shooter and scorer that maybe he has a good year. But can you really bet on that for more than a couple months? No, of course not. So I don't think that the Sixers want to be in this situation for more than a couple of months. Daryl Morey might force them to because he knows what's in the best interest for the team long term, and that's to get as much out of this Harden trade as possible. But nobody is going to come to them with a good Harden deal until the price goes down. Because Harden's not making it exactly enticing for any team to want to trade for him. It's kind of he's a flight risk on top of it. And he doesn't look like he wants to play basketball right now. And maybe he does. Maybe he does, and he just doesn't want to do it in Philly. but who knows? Might not want to do it in your city too. So I'm curious to see how it goes. Curious to see how this breaks down. But good win for the Bucks. Looked like they were going to drop it there for a little bit. Dame saves them. Giannis got to figure out what he does in those moments, not necessarily wanting him to stand on the perimeter and just stand around. He's got to find a way to be active and got to find a way to impact the team positively. So he will. He's a talented enough player that he'll figure it out. It will look a lot like 2021, where Chris Middleton was the guy taking over late in games at times. Now you've got Dame doing that. He's one of the best closers ever. So we will see what happens. But for now, let's tune in to CJ Holmes. Join me now is CJ Holmes of the San Francisco Chronicle. CJ, thank you so much for hopping on with me today. Really appreciate you taking the time. For everybody, make sure to go check out CJ's work at San Francisco Chronicle. He put up a couple of really nice articles that I think gave a really nice picture of Suns Warriors from the opener and just some different layers to that game that I think were very interesting. CJ, thanks for hopping on. What are your first impressions just from that night?
Well, it was a good night from my standpoint. I can't speak for the Warriors, but coming out of their performance on Tuesday night, I think it's a glass half full kind of situation. They're without Draymond Green. They went like 35 for 101 from the field. One of the worst shooting performances in Steve Kerr's tenure. Yet they only lost by 4 to a team that is perceived to be at top of the West this season. Chris Paul looked fantastic. I don't think there's going to be other questions about how he fits into this team. And kind of just figure they're not going to shoot the ball that poorly too many times this season. But overall, they did struggle defensively in certain spurts, especially there down the stretch in clutch time, giving up a pair of threes. But I think overall, yeah, they lost the game. I think you can be really optimistic about their outlook, and they should be getting Draymond Green back into the fold here in the coming weeks.
Well, that's good. That's good to hear. That was one of the things I was going to ask about, because it does seem like Draymond obviously ties the room together, but only giving up 108 to that Suns team, I think, is really impressive. And holding Kevin Durant to 7 of 22 is a really, really impressive defensive mark. And of course, there's some shots that KD can obviously hit with that, but it's a nice reminder that the Warriors, the backbone of the team for so many runs has been their defense, even though the offense is obviously what gets talked about a lot. Jonathan Kuminga closed the game over Andrew Wiggins. I thought that was an interesting point you had in your story. What has he done to earn that trust from Steve Kerr?
Well, I think a lot of it is just the work he put in over the offseason. I mean, 60-point game in Seattle. Seems like every time you looked on social media, Jonathan was in a gym somewhere getting in a workout, and that work, came to the surface during the preseason. He was one of the top scorers in the preseason. He led the Warriors in scoring in multiple games. What got Jonathan minutes last season was his defense, but now, it seems as if his offense is starting to come around. And with that, with 3 years of maturity in the league, that's how you get trust from Steve Kerr. Jonathan probably would have been featured more heavily on Tuesday night if it weren't for some first half foul trouble. He picked up 3 quick ones. And despite that, Kerr still trusted him down the stretch to stay out of foul trouble, which he did. And, Steve said this year, who finishes games will be based on, who's playing the best. And Jonathan, objectively was playing better than Andrew Wiggins on Tuesday. Therefore, he got to finish the game.
It is fascinating to think about, because I've been thinking about this Warriors team from a kind of a 6-player perspective for the most part, where you've got the 5 starters, and then you have Chris Paul, who, and he may be the starter. We talked about that in our preseason kind of check-in, but I do think that there are other layers to this team being better than people realized. And Jonathan Kuminga is obviously one of them. If he could start penciling himself in as one of those key contributors throughout the season and that into a playoffs, that changes the ceiling. It just does for a group that I think a lot of people know what they can expect with the Warriors, just with how good they've been over the course of these last few years, and then knowing what a guy like Chris Paul can bring. But Kuminga does seem like a nice variable to throw in there for sure. You mentioned Chris Paul playing well. I saw the stat line. I going to say I wasn't watching because I was still covering Denver that night, but like, what was it about his night that really stood out for you?
What stood out is he did all those little things that used to anger Warriors fans in the past. And, I think sometime in the third quarter, the crowd was chanting his name. It wasn't just the stat line that stood out to me. It was the fact that it was a seamless fit out there on the floor of Steph Curry. It was Chris Paul who was on the floor, in the third quarter during their big run. It was Chris Paul drawing the little fouls, keeping the troops in order, barking out defensive assignments, things of that nature. All the things that, make Chris Paul, one of the best point guards that the league has ever seen. The Warriors brought him in part to limit turnovers and help that second unit. I think the Warriors had just 11 turnovers on Tuesday, and the Warriors played some of their best basketball with Chris Paul and bench players on the court. It's just one game, it's one sample size, and obviously there's going to be another adjustment period once Draymond is healthy and back in the lineup. But so far, Paul is proving to be everything that this team needed, and he's doing all the things that the front office had in mind when they first traded for him.
It is fascinating that there were, like, going into this, there were some fit questions about whether he could fit into a team concept like the Warriors and the fast-paced offense, a very high IQ, high ball movement kind of offense. Yeah, it seems like he's fine. It seems like he'll be okay, and it seems like there are things that he can provide, but also things that he does as the point guard that he's been forever, that he can absolutely layer into that as well, and just settling down a team. One of the things I wanted to point out, 11 turnovers for the team. This is a high turnover team that generally has more than that and generally does a lot more taking of chances. And that's probably the direct correlation between losing a guy like Jordan Poole and gaining a guy like Chris Paul, right?
Yeah, for sure. Jordan's off in Washington now. Hopefully he can, he's a champion already. Hopefully he can, keep that thing going with the Wizards. I grew up a Wizards fan, so I'll be watching him closely during his time with the team. But they just need more. They just needed more of a steady presence on this team. Beyond Steph Curry. Beyond Draymond Green. Someone who can settle guys down, organize, run that second unit, keep turnovers low. Hold guys accountable, provide that extra layer of leadership, and those are the things that Chris brings to the table. So if you look at it from that standpoint alone, you're not going to get the scoring from Paul probably that you would get from a Jordan Poole, but you're getting a whole heck of a lot of everything else.
One quote that I found interesting in your Klay Thompson article, I'm going to just read it out for the audience. Quote, Thompson still has 81 regular season games left to right the ship and is liable to get hot at any moment. Friday's game against the Kings in Sacramento could prove to be a completely different story, but too many nights like this could cost Thompson his future with Golden State. That's a pretty interesting quote. I know that he's been tied up in the contract discussions, and that doesn't look like it's getting solved now. What more can you tell us about that? Like, how much pressure is he really playing under right now?
I can't speak to, Klay doesn't really like to talk to us media folks that often, so I can't speak to his current mindset. I know Anthony Slater was able to get Klay on one-on-one a couple weeks ago, being at training camp, and that kind of gave you a look into, how he's feeling. If I were to put myself in his shoes, I would definitely feel a little bit of pressure, right? This is somewhere where he said he wants to spend the rest of his career, and I think that there has to be a little bit of disappointment in not having a deal done before the year began, especially when Draymond got paid, and Jordan and Andrew got paid last year, before he did. This is a guy who helped deliver 4 championships to the Warriors. This is a guy who at one time was considered, the second greatest shooter on the planet behind Stephen Curry. Some people still view him that way, but it's a fact that, since Klay suffered those injuries, he's not the defender he used to be. He's not as consistent as he once was. And, that the up and down nature of his play, probably gives the front office a little bit of pause. It's, I would imagine that it's Mike Dunleavy Jr.'s top priority to make sure to put the best pieces around Stephen Curry as possible as he, slowly enters the twilight of his career. And on top of all that, money is in a crunch. Klay had his moments last season, but he didn't show up in the playoffs. He's also had a rough preseason. So they just don't know what Klay Thompson they're going to get. So it all really shapes up to be the ultimate prove-it season for the 33-year-old. And, if I were Klay, either way you spin it, he can't really lose. Of course, yeah, there's disappointment if he ends up, playing elsewhere after this year. But, either you step up, play well, and the Warriors pay you what you think, you're worth, or you step up and you play well and, you probably get overpaid by another team, Either way, he can't lose, but, the idea of, not being a part of this franchise going forward, has to be weighing on him a little bit. But Klay Thompson is a supremely confident dude. Everyone in the locker room seems to be very confident with him. And, really it's just up to Klay if he's going to, find that consistency that, everyone's looking for.
It does also feel like the missing of Draymond Green probably affects him tremendously, both on the offensive and defensive end of the floor. I mean, we've seen him being defending power forwards. We've seen him playing guys that are way bigger than him on that end, and it's just very physically taxing. It was one of the things that when I saw that quote, I was very concerned about just his ability to kind of get back to where he needed to be physically and at being as efficient as he could possibly be, because it just takes a lot of a physical toll to be able to handle a position like that. And adding in Chris Paul and deciding that Andrew Wiggins needs to be the man-on defender, like the point of attack defender, it puts a lot of pressure on Klay physically, and then obviously the offense. Like, he's got to be the second scorer a lot of nights, so it's a lot. So I mean, not necessarily a great position to succeed, especially without Draymond Green in the picture, but it's something I'll be watching closely for sure. Any other takeaways from Golden State Phoenix?
Well, you would hope that, Wiggins has proven, in the past that when healthy, he's more consistent than, what he showed on Tuesday night. And the hope is that, he'll slowly start to ramp up as the year goes on. Moses Moody, man. A lot of people are talking about, Jonathan Kuminga's third year, but, Moody's another guy who's had to patiently wait his turn. He was fantastic against Phoenix. I would have liked to see him get more minutes in the fourth quarter, but like I said, Steve said that these closing lines are going to be determined on a game by game basis. So I know that Moody's going to get his chance, and he hit a lot of big shots in the first half that helped keep the Warriors in it. I mean, that game could have got ugly, and Moody came in, stepped up, and hit some big shots and kept the game within reach, all while playing pretty tenaciously on defense. So as much as I know that the Jonathan Kuminga third-year hype train has already taken off, but that Moses Moody train should be right behind him, and it all bodes well for the Warriors.
That's another one I'll obviously be watching, because the first game that Moses Moody closes over Klay Thompson, that's going to be a very interesting dynamic for several reasons. But we'll find out together. That should be very fun. On the Suns side of things, KD shoots 7 of 22. They don't have Bradley Beal, but Devin Booker, still Devin Booker. Like, I honestly, genuinely feel like he's pushing top 5 player in the league kind of status with the way that he plays night in and night out. What was it about his game that was able to get free? And then I watched a couple of the highlights, obviously, at the end. His point guard play and being able to set up a guy like Yusuf Nurkic on the roll, that seems like a really big value add for a Phoenix Suns team that doesn't really have a point guard.
It's funny because, when I was with The Athletic a couple years ago, during my early days with The Athletic, should I say, I was in that Phoenix market. I used to watch, cover games where Devin Booker's dropping 40 points, as a 21-year-old or something, in front of empty crowds. So first I want to say to see, the way that they've continued to believe in Devin and build around Devin, and Devin himself taking his game to the next level. It's been incredible to see, and I'm glad that he's finally getting, getting the attention he's always deserved as, one of the better two guards in this league. But, in terms of performance Tuesday night, a lot of just book just being Book. Bradley Beal was out. Klay Thompson was making Kevin Durant's life a little difficult on defense. And, Booker just took over the game. He took advantage of an Andrew Wiggins who, wasn't as sharp as he usually is on that end of the court. And Book was just getting buckets. I don't know how else to frame it. He just came out aggressive. Shots were falling for him. And it's a great start to the season for, someone who, like I said, is one of the better two guards in this league.
I think they're going to be good. And I think one of the things that stands out, a team like the Suns, it was very concerning. The defense for them had developed a lot of the attention, a lot of the question marks. But now you give up a 104 to a team like Golden State that obviously has a lot of firepower and has a lot of dynamic players itself. And that says something to me. And I think Frank Vogel kind of getting involved there and maybe making a statement in terms of how good that team could be defensively. I think that's going to be something else that's interesting to track too. Were they doing anything in particular that was difficult for Golden State to score on, or was it just more Golden State missing shots?
I think it was just more so Golden State missing shots. They got a lot of great looks. They missed a lot of shots around the rim. They certainly had their opportunities. So, I can't really speak to, I can't sit here and say, Phoenix is, some great defensive team. I don't think they did anything spectacular.
Right.
But I think Golden State just had a tough night shooting the basketball, and things could be completely different when they see this Phoenix team again in a couple weeks.
Well, we will see what happens. Before I let you get out of here, I wanted to chat about some of the other teams that played on Wednesday night. We'll go to Denver Lakers first, because I think that's one where lots of folks are going to want my opinion on the Nuggets game. Who's Your Daddy was an epic chant. That was just and I couldn't believe that the fan base actually brought that to the table, but they did. And seeing the life leave the eyes of Lakers players was kind of wild, I'm not gonna lie. But that was a very interesting moment on that night. And just I wanted to ask you, especially because you have also covered ring nights before for the Warriors, and then you've covered these very singular moments in history where a team both gets their rings and raises a banner and gets to watch that thing go up to the rafters forever. What was it like for you covering Golden State's last year? And then I'll share some moments about Denver's.
It was just a great experience, as a basketball writer, you always, dream of having the opportunity not only to cover a championship team, but, be there when those guys, receive their rings. And I think it was just a special moment for everyone involved. You got the pageantry of it all, the pregame video, and guys coming out one by one in their championship warm-up zips, and getting their rings from the commissioner at half court. But the most special moment of all is when that spotlight goes up into the top corners of the arena and they drop that banner, and it's just that's what this game's about. It's about the championships. Usually the energy in those buildings, or the building is crazy on ring night, speaking from experience. And, I assume you felt a lot of the same in Denver.
So it's interesting to compare and contrast. So the energy, yes, you're right. It was on 11,000 out of 10. It was insane, and people were extremely happy. And that was a good vibe, a good energy to have. And Jamal Murray did his blue arrow celebration, which he never does. And Nikola Jokic was staring up at the banner. And dude, there was a very interesting moment because Jokic gets criticized for Like sometimes people think he's apathetic towards basketball. He says that outwardly to the media, but watching him watch the banner for like 10 to 15 seconds in a row with the cameras like directly on him, just like eyes glistening with tears, was very cool. And it's something I will never forget. But interesting comparison. So you said that they dropped the banner, just they kind of unveiled the banner while it was up in the rafters. Denver actually raised the banner from the floor. That it was a unfortunately long amount of time that they were raising this thing up to the rafters, but it was cool and just good to see Denver able to have that moment. But yeah, it was a good game and very exciting. Denver looks like the clearly better team than Los Angeles right now, at least, and we'll see if that ever changes. But I don't think it's going to change in Los Angeles with the Lakers unless they actually get some better personnel to match up with the Nuggets. But any takeaways from that particular game on your end?
I mean, for a team that lost like a lot of its bench production, I know Denver returned all their starters from last season, but for a team that lost so much bench production, I mean, the guys who are stepping in to fill those roles, I mean, they've looked pretty good. Christian Braun, he's back from last year. Brown, and he looked great. Zeke Naji, a guy player I used to cover at the University of Arizona. He's finally getting some time out there on the court. He looked great. And I just think overall Denver's going to be a tough team to beat. Especially if their bench depth can even replicate the production that they got from guys like Bruce Brown and last year. I mean, they're going to be pretty good.
Yeah, Julian Strawther didn't play. He had a really great preseason for them, so we'll see if he can step into it too. But Peyton Watson, Zeke Naji, Christian Brown, it's not a bad defensive group. Lots of switching, lots of modern basketball for sure. And Jamal's going to be out there pretty much with them regardless of what happens. So should be interesting to monitor. Let's bounce around the NBA really quickly before we get you out of here. Bucks Sixers is tonight. I'll do a little bit of a recap of that at some point. There's a fiasco going on right now with James Harden, and there's even tweets as we're recording this as to why he's not there versus what's actually going on. And we all know what's going on, but like can't really say it. So that'll be interesting to monitor. Celtics Knicks, first impressions of Kristaps Porzingis and Jrue Holiday on that team.
I thought that Porzingis would be a great fit with Boston, in the offseason, and the dude comes out and drops 30 in his Celtics debut. I think that pretty much speaks for itself. Another guy who can, give the team that offense, in the post, stretch the floor, make more room for Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. I think it's just a perfect fit, and a lot of people, there are a lot of contenders, clamoring for Jrue Holiday's services. A couple weeks back, and the Celtics were the team that got lucky enough to acquire him. He was great defensively. I don't have the numbers right in front of me right now, but I think there's like 3 guys that he played a huge hand in shutting down single-handedly. So
well, one of them was Julius Randle. Like that's the thing.
Yeah.
Like Julius Randle is a behemoth of a power forward. Like he's a traditional 90s style power forward who goes through people in the modern NBA. And he couldn't get anything on Jrue. That's insane.
Yeah, that's what makes Jrue so valuable in this league. One of the best perimeter defenders. Celtics were pretty good last year, and they have a lot of new pieces, but it seems as if they have gotten better with these new acquisitions. So they'll definitely be a threat to watch in the Eastern Conference.
Certainly a threat. Knicks had an opportunity there, but couldn't quite close the door. We'll see what happens with the Knicks this year. Victor Wembanyama's debut. Definitely a must-see television event for sure. In foul trouble for most of the nights, but 15 points, 5 rebounds, 2 steals, a block in 23 minutes. Still pretty impressive stuff from Victor Wembanyama. Luka has a mean triple-double on the other side, but it's just really interesting to watch those two kind of go back, not back and forth specifically, but how they impact the game in such drastically different ways, but like are complete monsters clearly.
Yeah, Luka just makes the game look so easy. I was just talking to my roommate about it last night when we watched the game. We're like, this guy just makes it look so easy, but without most people realizing the things he's out there doing have like an extremely high level of difficulty, and he makes the impossible look simple. He looks to be in a better shape this year. He looked a little bit slimmer. Was moving around well, and Luke is a guy that's kind of been on the cusp of MVP candidacy. Meaningful MVP candidacy for the last couple of years now. He's gonna have to. I know they got Kyrie Irving there, but Luke is still gonna be one expected to carry that team, and he enters the season in better shape, and we'll see what he can become. As far as Wembanyama, you can tell with his frame that it's going to really take him a while to be impactful in the low post, especially if he's towering over everyone. He has these smaller, stronger forwards and centers kind of getting up under him with that low center of gravity. So it's going to be kind of tough for him to make an impact on the post. But he proved that he can stretch the floor last night. Like, what did he make, like 4 threes last night?
It was crazy. And the first one that he took, like, I mean, he's just popping these things in transition from 28 feet. Like it's nothing. It's the kind of confidence they have to have as a generational prospect to do something like that. That was pretty interesting to me.
Yeah. He definitely had his moments in the foul trouble. That is what it is. But my biggest thing is he got hot in the fourth quarter, and then he didn't attempt a shot for like the final 2 minutes or so. Get the kid the ball. Like I hope Greg Popovich, sat his team down after that game and said, when he gets hot, you get him the ball, because he should have gotten more opportunities. I thought I was gonna kind of like wrap up the way Zion's preseason, like season debut started. Got hot in the fourth quarter, got the Pelicans back in it, or kept the Pelicans in. I thought it was gonna be something like that, but his teammates ruined the finale, man. I know you got to play basketball at the end of the day, but everyone was there to see Victor. He got hot late. Give him the ball, man. He should have had more attempts down the stretch.
There will be plenty of opportunities, but that's something that has to happen organically, and like he'll earn it over the course of time. But like, I'm with you, man. Like, give the dude the rock. Like, come on now. Cavs Nets is another one that I thought was interesting from Wednesday night. Max Strus, that dude's a perfect fit for that team. Just a clear, perfect fifth starter for a Cavs group that felt like it had one missing piece. And you've got Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen. Allen didn't play last night. But Max Strus he's going to complete that team in a lot of ways. I think they're going to win a bunch of games this year.
It's funny because, when Strus first got the bag from the Cavs, a lot of people thought they were overpaying, right? And then he comes out and has 27 and
he had 12 rebounds too. Like, all the things.
27 and 12 rebounds in his Cavs debut. So, hats off to Strus. Hopefully this paces him for a career year, and he can prove a lot of people wrong, because there were a lot of people who thought he got overpaid, and by the end of this year, he might have some people saying, man, he didn't get paid enough, which is always a position you want to put people in. But as far as the Nets, a lot of interesting pieces. Ben Simmons only had 4 points last night, but he did a good job running the show. Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, these are two guys who, after that KD trade, they arrived in Brooklyn, and each of them, their production just skyrocketed, being in situations where they can do more, with the basketball. How about Thomas? Thomas, man, like a certified bucket getter. If they can get him to play a lick of defense, then that Nets team should be in good shape. Despite all the dysfunction around that team last year, despite the KD trade, despite the Kyrie trade, losing James Harden, they still managed to make the playoffs. So if they can continue the build with this young core, maybe at some point this season flip a couple of these role players for a veteran, they're not too far off from. I want to say they're from being a championship contender, but they're just a few pieces away from being a high level, respectable team in the Eastern Conference.
I'm not sure exactly what they need. Maybe just like an upgrade over Dinwiddie as like a primary decision maker of sorts. But if you believe in Simmons, if you believe in Mikal Bridges, if you paid Cam Johnson, you like Nick Claxton, okay, that's 4. Then now you need one more, and maybe that's Cam Thomas. Maybe that's an upgrade over Spencer Dinwiddie. Maybe it is Spencer Dinwiddie. Who knows? But they are a unique team, and I'm curious to watch them for at least these next couple months to see what they can turn into, because it does feel like the Ben Simmons hype train kind of stalled a little bit, but he still had 10 rebounds and 9 assists. So like he can provide that all around impact, and as long as he's being a little bit more aggressive, maybe kind of going through his first game this year, a little bit tentative, a little bit passive, got to go towards the basket. Like if he can get towards the basket, then they will. Like, I think they'll be a playoff team, a legit playoff team too, because the rest of that team is talented. It's a good group.
Agreed.
So we will see. Couple more for you. Cade Cunningham's back. That's an interesting one to monitor. He had like 30 points and 9 assists in his return, and they're not exactly doing him any favors over there. Like they've got Jalen Duren and Isaiah Stewart starting together. They had Osar Thompson and Killian Hayes in the backcourt. Like Bojan Bogdanovic will start at some point, but it's not a lot of space for your young star, and you usually want to make things easiest for them as possible. I'm not going to sit here and belabor the point about the Detroit Pistons, but it is interesting because Cade Cunningham could be that next up-and-coming star that everybody's really clamoring for.
Yeah, Cade's breakout's kind of been on hold because of injuries, but like you said, he looked good in the season opener. I think the Pistons look great defensively. I think they're up by as many as 19 before they let go of the rope. But like you said, Osar Thompson, we'll see what becomes of Killian Hayes. He's been real up and down. Interesting situation there in the front court between James Wiseman and Marvin Bagley and what's his name? Jalen Duren. So there's some interesting young front court pieces, and the Pistons continue to build through the draft, and they're slowly getting more competitive. Will there be a playoff team this year? I don't know, but I think they're pretty close, and only a few pieces away.
We will see what happens. But hey, CJ, I've kept you long enough. Thank you so much for hopping on with me. Everybody make sure to go check out CJ's work at the San Francisco Chronicle. Wrote a couple of really nice stories on the Warriors' interesting, unique, dynamic situations. So going to be interesting to monitor throughout the year, my friend. Thank you so much. I'll check in with you in a few weeks.
Hey, thanks for having me.
That'll do it for this episode of the Alley-Oop. Once again, thank you to CJ Holmes for coming on, telling us about the Golden State Warriors, Chris Paul, Klay Thompson. There's just a lot of different layers, I think, to this Warriors team. So should be very interesting to hear from them throughout the year. Once again, the divisional check-ins will be starting up on Friday, November 3rd, this next week. We are going to have one more guest on Tuesday and maybe do something kind of similar to this, but the divisional check-ins will start on Friday, November 3rd with the Atlantic Division. So it should be a lot of fun. Thank you so much to everybody for listening in, and subscribe to both the YouTube and the Apple and Spotify feeds and things like that. Wherever you get your podcasts, that would be so amazing and helps me out tremendously. So thank you so much if you enjoyed. I hope you come back, and I will see you guys next week.